Welcome back to A Life Worth Living, a place for real and raw conversations with people from all different walks of life. In a world with social media where people's best lives are on display, we all need refreshing reminders that no one is perfect and you are not alone. This is where you hear the greatest life lessons from the most incredible life stories. A daily reminder of how beautiful this life is and how life is truly worth living. Today we are speaking with Henry Ammar. Henry Ammar is an international speaker and a growth and transformation expert. In today's episode, we discuss various topics ranging from rewiring the brain to overcoming and navigating the hardships of illness and the loss of a loved one. I'm so excited that you're here. This is going to be an insane episode. I already know.
Thanks.
So it's going to be so
I'm
good.
excited. We'll see what happens.
Well, I want you to tell the listeners like a little bit of who you are and what you do, because you're an insanely incredible human being.
Thank you.
Everything that you do is constantly impacting those around you.
Thank you.
So if people don't know about the different things that you're involved in, like they either need to be contacting you as soon as possible.
You're so awesome.
So tell us, what is it?
Yeah, so I'm really good. I ride a unicycle. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. I don't know how to ride a unicycle. I was thinking of something totally left field, and that was what came to my mind. No, I'm obsessed with human behavior. so you did not know that was coming. That's awesome. Yeah, so I've been obsessed with human behavior for 25 years now. It's because I needed it, right? Like I was obsessed because, as a teenager, I was hyper insecure, cared what everybody thought. My nickname was Passive. Because I never would say how I felt. Like I always wanted people's validation. Their opinion was more important than mine. Never thought I fit in. Had the smile on my face, but inside felt like I was like totally stuck. And, a book was put in front of me and I was like 17 years old, around 16, 17 years old. And ironically, it was a Dr. Phil book, a teenager reading Dr. Phil. But it wasn't even the book. It was like questions they asked. And for one moment, I was like, well, I could change. Because sometimes we think like this is how life is.
Yeah.
And freedom is so big for me. And I was like, man, this fear that cages me, like, I don't want to feel this anymore. And so I got super obsessed. Like, literally every book I could read, every seminar I can go to, everybody, I would develop the courage to go ask people that I saw that were confident. I was like, so why are you confident? And I started picking up patterns, and then I started applying them to myself, and I started feeling more free and more empowered. And then I would go help other people and coach teams, and those teams would win national championships. And I was like, this stuff works. And it's like this momentum happens. And especially after like 24 years, my thing is like, how do we get to the deepest sense of freedom for people internally? How do you take people into power, into love, into freedom for themselves, for other people? And, just put together a framework that I've seen. I was like, I don't want people to have to work 24 years to teach what I teach and learn what I learn. So I'm grateful to help people break through like really fast. That's what I'm really excited about. And
you give the major breakthroughs and the paradigm shifts, and you are a growth and transformation expert.
Thank you.
And that is, you work with so many incredible people who do similar things too, like Tony Robbins, and you're constantly surrounded with people who are, I mean, we just went to your wedding, which I was
fun.
So excited that you just found the biggest angel, and I just am so
grateful.
I love her. We're gonna have her on.
That would be awesome. Yeah, she's amazing. Her story is incredible.
Yeah. So I remember just being at your wedding, and I was like, there's like 300 people here. So many people. Every single individual in that room was so special.
It was amazing. The people there were incredible.
Amazing individuals. Like, it was just so neat to me. I'm like, you just surround yourself with, which is why I love doing this podcast, because I just want to be able to bring in people like that. And because there's so much value we each can provide. And so anyways, but I love what you do. I love that you're able to give so much to those around you. And I think that a lot of times we do something in our own lives where we experience like growth and change. A lot of times very uncomfortable.
Totally.
And then we're able to give, if we choose to, we can help other people in similar ways. So I just am so grateful that you did that, because you've impacted my life.
Thank you. That's I think that's one thing I realized is we're all on a hero's journey. Like my struggle becomes my strength to help people. Like the reason why I think people resonate with you, like, people that follow you know you, but like you've been through it, you've wrestled through it, your struggle turned to wisdom, your struggle turned to helping people. And I think that's the beauty of it. Dr. Joe Dispenza said something really cool once. He said, people ask me, what happens when you have that shift in your brain, in your mind? What happens to it? Like those memories, what ends up happening to those memories? He goes, they get stored in your soul as wisdom. Wow, you know, and I think like there's so many people, like when you really look at the people that have helped a lot of people, they help them through their own experience. It's not it's not just theory. It's life, soul experience, you know?
Yeah, trial and error.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Big time. That's why I'm grateful for people who like, I love when we go and we get educated and certified and licensed, and you go to college and you learn all these things, which knowledge is everything, and becoming educated is everything, but there's so much more to personal experience. And so people who go through these things, a lot of times it's really difficult to face it and use it and turn it into a positive, but it's so valuable because it's, in my opinion, more valuable than just going and learning through textbooks, you know, because you have this emotion that's there that it's not comparable. Yeah. And so I think it's really cool. I watch you connect with people all the time. In fact, something that, you know, and I'm actually becoming licensed and certified in what you have done, which is the Neuro Linguistic programming. Yeah. And I've seen you do things in person that are literally mind-blowing. Like, oh my gosh, like I just wish that we can get more of those things on video so people can see that like they can experience this too. But rewiring the brain is not only possible, but it is crucial. And you've done that right in front of me and so many other people with individuals where you pull them up and you're like, okay, let's take you through a process, you know, and it gets so real and deep. Like, you know, it's like pulling up childhood trauma and like seeing this from like, you know, I didn't even know this girl when I was watching it happen and you were doing this, and she was so willing to be vulnerable and let everyone see her go through this process. But I was like, whoa, she was diving deep and like she was getting emotional. We all were getting emotional, and you like changed her life.
Oh man.
So how can you explain how that happened? Like what you do?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, so I think there's a framework that I've realized, in my opinion and my experience over the last X amount of years working with so many people, no matter who it is, like if I'm sitting across and I'm coaching a billionaire or a celebrity or any industry, you could pick out anybody, like incredible mothers, you know, it doesn't matter. Some people think like everybody has a different set of, you know, problems, which is true, but the root of it to me is very similar. And I think there's 3 things you absolutely need if you really want to create empowerment in your life and a breakthrough in your life. First, you need to understand how to heal from your past, because all of us, like everybody, most of our belief system comes between 0 and 7. Yep. And we can talk about that, and
I always am talking about that. Yeah. It's just the best concept.
It's crazy because we're running an outdated program, right? Yep. And we're running this thing of like, this is what I thought would keep me safe. And, you know, one quick example, like, and I share this because it's so simple. There was a lady I was working with, she was 40 years old. She came up to me like just completely, like when she shook my hand, she locked her arms out, like, don't get near me, had walls up. We built enough rapport, and she was successful in business. She was a VP at a big bank. Wow. She was an amazing mother. She had all these awards. Like she was like on the outside looked super successful. Yeah. When we built enough rapport, she looked at me and she goes, Henry, no matter what I do, I feel like a failure. Oh. And she finally like opened up to me, you know, and like rapport is a big thing when you're working with people.
Yeah. And well, you're building trust.
Yeah, complete trust.
That's really the biggest thing, because you want them to know they can trust you. They're safe.
Yeah. 100%.
But you're 100%. Literally perfect at.
You're so awesome.
You were born for that. So.
Yeah, I care. I genuinely care, you know, and I looked at her and I was like, man, like she was 40 years old. And so I said, let's find out when the first time this happened. So there's a bunch of different processes we can do, like a ton. I've studied, you know, as you said, NLP, trauma-informed healing, all different things. Like literally, I'm obsessed. While my now wife is at the gym listening to music, I'm listening to like neuroscientists, like I'm like taking notes. She's like, "Are you listening to a book or like an interview?" I was like, "Yeah," and she's like, "Do." She's like lifting weights, and I'm like, the amygdala in the brain is, you know, and I'm just like, anyways. So I'm literally obsessed, and so
you're a sponge.
Big time. It's because it's fascinating to me, and I feel like there's always room to grow, no matter where you are, and But with this girl, there was a process we did where we took her back to find the root cause of that belief.
Yeah.
Because we can get into the nerdiness of it, but the root cause of it, when it first started, when she made the decision, you know, we could say it's a limiting belief, but truly it's a limiting decision, because at one point we made a decision that formulated into a belief. Something happened in the framework of what we said, you know, we did. And so it turned out she was 4 years old, and to give you the nutshell, she was 4 years old. Her dad grabbed her by the arm and moved her and said, "You failed me." So because her caretaker, the person that keeps her safe, said, "You failed me," and was mad at her, her subconscious mind said, if I fail, then I won't be safe. So her framework was, in life, I don't want to fail. I can't fail. I can't fail. I can't fail. But if I told you, Britt, don't think of a purple tree, what did you think of?
Purple tree.
Right. So if I'm thinking don't fail, my mind is always focused on failure.
Subconsciously, it's just constantly
Subconsciously, 100%. So it's like, it's not really focused on success. There's a difference between not focusing on failure. Like, I don't want to fail and I want to succeed. Two different things,
100%.
right? So number one part of the framework is you have to know how to heal from your past and understand the wiring of it, what happened. We can go on, but it's just, that's part one. Part two is, how do you reprogram your subconscious mind for the future that you truly want? And I mean literally, like, how do you step into not just consciously saying, I am great, but embodying the belief that I am great. So the identity, the belief system, the values, knowing those things, how do you wire it into your brain to where it's not even just, oh, like it's like an affirmation. It's like, no, you wake up and you're like, this is who I am. Yeah. Like little Henry that was super, super duper passive and insecure, like literally there's a difference between confidence and arrogance, by the way. I feel I'm really confident in my life. Like, I'm not perfectly confident. There's always things I'm like, oh, that came up, but then I do the work on it. Yeah. But it's like you embody this new identity, these new things. So how do you reprogram your subconscious mind for the future and begin to manifest and create and attract the things that you really want? Relationships, finance, success, whatever that looks like. And then the third thing, which is I think one of the most important, is how do you empower yourself in this present moment? Emotional mastery, real confidence, learning how to deal with struggles. And so when you understand those three things, how do you heal? How do you truly reprogram your subconscious mind? And how do you empower yourself here and now? Because this is where everything happens. This is where you reprogram the past and the future. Unless we understand that, unless we know how to get into it, then that's it. It's
one of those things that I feel like was never talked about in previous generations. Mental health has become a huge thing that we're now, being more open about. And this takes it to a whole nother level. But the reason why everyone needs to know this is because it brings freedom that nothing else can. Right. You can make all the money you want in the world. You can become famous. You can have, it doesn't matter. But like these things, you have to go beyond the surface level. 100%. And I think that's what's incredible is like now we have more people talking about, hey, let's figure out the root. Yes. And like that's what you're all about. And the thing is that the root is what ultimately allows you to be free, because it's limiting beliefs, it's limiting decisions, and subconsciously they're dictating everything in your life, the relationships you get into, 100%. The people you surround yourself, the job you end up doing, like everything. And it also develops your perspective on yourself and the perspective around you. And so on the world around you. And so I feel like that, as we are able to learn and just have the knowledge and the awareness that, wait, there's something that I can actually just like, rewire. And then my life could look completely different. The way I want it to. 100%. And so I'm really stoked because, and I want to have you on more often because there's so much value, but you have things that are coming up that I feel like so many people can, be a part of and learn from. One thing is your book. Yeah. You're coming out with your book. Yeah. And you have 2 books. Yeah. Which I'm so excited for both, but the one that's coming out sooner. What is that? Yeah. So I was writing one and I was literally working with neuroscientists and other people about like, how do you truly heal yourself forward, right? Like in the way, using your ambition, all this stuff. And so I'm writing it. And then all of a sudden I had this like really
big inspiration, revelation, download, whatever you want to call it, that said, pause, write this book. And it was about boundaries, but it was an approach on boundaries I'd never seen before and I haven't heard before. And I was like, interesting. And so I just started putting all the framework in terms of understanding all the human behavior elements that I knew and thinking about, oh my gosh, this is what happens when you don't understand how to set proper boundaries. And the book is love-based boundaries, really, versus fear-based boundaries. And my focus has been like, I think a lot of times we live in fear-based living versus love-based living, like this bondage of freedom. And freedom shows up as insecurity, fear of failure, fear of success. I mean, I have a list of like 70 ways that I've seen working with people across the world. But so then I paused that other book, and then by the end of next week, I'll have my final draft done where I have like a certain amount of people like reading it. I'm like, you read it, I want you to read it and tell me what really impacts you, what makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm finishing that one. I'm super excited about it. I think they're super important. One of the principal thoughts about boundaries, and something I think would resonate with people is, fear-based boundaries can show up in many different ways. But if I don't set proper boundaries, like say, for example, someone doesn't know how to set proper boundaries, I can never love you the way that I need to love you because I'm going to be in a survival response. You've crossed my zone of safety. You've crossed my place of like where my nervous system feels safe. And now I'm being depleted. And if I'm in survival mode, I can't, you have to feel safe before you feel love.
Wow.
You have to feel safe before you succeed. You have to feel safe before anything else comes.
Well, safety is the number one human desire. Safety and love. Those are the two things that we constantly are seeking subconsciously. Like no matter what anyone says, that's just what the human body needs.
100%. And if we don't feel safe, it's going to be really hard for me to, because when we're in a stress response, a survival response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, like my goal is survive. And if I'm only playing defense, it's hard for me to really love you. And so in relationships, a boundary isn't like I'm keeping you out. A love-based boundary is how do we create a zone of expansion between us? Wow. And so I start off the book with this story of porcupines. And there's a story of porcupines in like the harsh winter. And they're really cold, so they get close to each other, but they start poking each other, hurt each other. Then they get too far, then they start to freeze. But they find the optimal space that keeps them warm and keeps them safe at the same time. And as they get more comfortable, they're like, anyways, they can get closer and closer. And some people aren't meant to be close to you, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the book I'm excited about, I'm just in creation mode pretty big time, and I'm really excited.
Stoked.
Yeah.
I'm so stoked. Well, let's see, actually, I wanted to ask before we go into our uncensored Q&A, I wanted to ask something that I feel like a lot of people are kind of searching for that you've mastered when it comes to intuition and trusting yourself. Something that I feel like can be really overwhelming to learn how to do. Yeah. And so what's some advice that you would give as far as like how to be able to find the ways that you can become one and grounded and really hear your intuition? Everyone has different higher powers and stuff, so you can incorporate that. But your intuition is something that I feel like is separate. It's very much so personal between you and yourself, like your true self, your spirit, your soul, whatever. And then not only do you have to have that, like being able to do the intuition, but you got to trust it.
Yeah, so, 100%.
So can you give like a little bit of, light on that?
Yeah, I mean, thanks. I literally, everything you're asking, I'm like, let's just spend an hour on this. It'll be awesome.
It's so hard.
But giving you like the gist of it, actually, I'll share a story first. I was speaking at a conference in San Francisco, and I don't know if you've heard of Heart Math. Heart Math is, they're a really cool company, and they measure people's EEGs, their EKGs, they do brain scans, they measure people's energy frequencies.
Wow.
And I was speaking right after their director of intelligence, and I was like, and this is when I first started speaking, I was like, why'd you guys put me after him? Like, But he got up and shared a really cool message. And it was so cool because it like led right into my message, and that was a totally divine thing. But he said people are most intuitive, their studies have shown, when they're living in the emotion of gratitude and love. And so he gave this really long process. It was funny. I had this like 3-step process, and he gave like a 16-step process to get there. But he said when you're literally in the state of gratitude, your EEG and your EKG are going, they literally are in flow. Wow. And when you're angry or jealous or whatever that is, like it's jagged. And so you start to detach yourself from alignment of what that looks like. And
so scientifically proven.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. You guys can check out the research on your own with that. But gratitude's a really simple, big thing. We hear it all the time. It sounds cliche. Be grateful.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between thinking gratitude and feeling gratitude. Right? Like how many times, like I ask this question and I pray, right? So I said to me, and I believe in God, and if you can replace this with whatever you believe, if you're listening or watching. But I said, what if God didn't hear my words, but he heard my heart? Would I really be saying I'm grateful?
I love that.
You know, and so the question is, I could say, I'm really grateful for my life. I'm really grateful. But one thing that's really important in all healing and everything that we do is understanding emotional embodiment, right? Like what is happening with our emotions? How do we listen to our emotions? How do we create emotion? How do we shift emotion? Remember when I was talking about emotional mastery in the present, it's not just master your emotions. If you're angry, no. This is like learning to really understand subconsciously what that emotion is telling you. At what age did it form at? What is it really telling you need? It's not just protection, right? And so if we can get into the state of gratitude, the emotional state of gratitude, studies have shown that's a simple way to do it. My addition to that throughout my life is along the lines of, there was one point in my life where I said, I will no longer live in fear, but I'm going to operate from a space of alignment spiritually and love, because to me they're one and the same, right? And I remember starting out one day and I said, I will not, because when I'm in my body out of fear, everybody has it a little different, but we really get into our head, right? And we get into the mind, and what the mind is, it's referencing the past over and over and over again, right? Yeah. Reacting, when I'm reactive to life, I'm reacting out the past. It's the word itself means to act again. Right, so I'm acting out the trauma, whatever it is in my past. So, to become mindful, to use a different part of my brain or my body, and really being able to listen. And there was a moment I said, you know what, I'm going to stop being a puppet to external things, and I'm going to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to stop living on autopilot. Because how many times do you get to the end of the day and you're like, what did I even do today? Right? Did I really intentionally? Like in this conversation, was I really here? When we're talking to those we love, are we intentionally like really lighting them up? Really every conversation you have with someone you love could be a conversation where you just pour into them every time if it's intentional. Yeah. But we go through these motions and we go on autopilot. So there was back to the moment is I said, I will no longer live in fear. And so I remember walking through the mall and I was like, I'm just going to I had this message I wanted to share with people, and I was like, you know what? I know it's really awkward, and I'm terrified to do it. So I'm walking around the mall. I remember this so clearly, and I was like, had all this like nervous energy, and this is when I was learning my emotions. I didn't really know how to like understand my emotions, how to create new ones. This is very early on in my like stage of progression, many years ago. And I'm walking around, and I was really scared to talk to girls at the time. And I was like, okay, I'm going to open myself up to see who I'm supposed to share this with. And all of a sudden, like, I see this really cute girl in Abercrombie and Fitch, and my heart went, and I was like, shoot, man, I don't know if that was like God telling me to talk to her or like my nervous energy, because she's cute, you know?
Well, that's the thing that I'm really like, a lot of people don't know how to distinguish the difference.
It too.
Yeah.
And this is what I learned. And so that story was really funny to give you the punchline, because it was really funny. I paced them all for 20 minutes. And the guy probably at the kiosk was like, who the heck is this guy like walking in front of Abercrombie? He's like a stalker or something. So finally I called my cousin at the time, who was like Rico Suave. He goes like, hey man, I really want to talk to this girl. What should I do? He goes, how many steps away from her are you? And I was like, 10. He goes, you ready? I go, for what? He goes, 10. 9, 8, and I'm like taking steps towards her, and she's looking at me like, what is this guy doing? And I go up to her, and I'm like, and I'm on the phone, and I hang up the phone, and I'm like, hi, my name is Henry, and I like panically said something to her, and at the end she was like, thanks. Like, it was kind of awkward, and I like walk away. But at that point I just realized something. I was like, you know what? To me, in my heart and my mind, I did what I thought was the right thing. Yeah. And whether or not it was the right thing, like, I honored what I believed was right. And if you believe in a higher power, whether it's God or love or universe, like, to me, I think God's probably like, Henry, that was really cute. And that wasn't what I directed you to do, but that was cute, and I'll work it out for your good in some way, right? Yeah. And I truly believe if we just wake up and align ourselves before we start our day. Get into gratitude, set the intention, and ask. Michael Beckwith, I went to the premiere of the movie Heal, and he said something on the panel that was really cool. He said, I wake up every morning and I ask, what's my assignment? Mm-hmm. And if someone pops in my mind that day, I just follow it. And what I've learned is, to me, it's been like a muscle. If someone pops in my mind, I listen. And then I could be trusted with more. Mm-hmm. And then I listen. Then I could be trusted with more. Then one day it's like, I've had the most crazy intuitive promptings.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just do them. And everyone's like, you're crazy. I was like, I know. But those same promptings got me on stage in front of 40,000 people. Mm-hmm. The same promptings helped me save someone's life. Wow. The same promptings was where I'd walk. I had this, I went to this one place and I felt like I should give something to this one. I just felt like I should give something to somebody. And I'm standing there, literally, go stand at this place at this time. Don't be distracted. I go there and some guy walks by and goes, hey, is that for me? And I was like, yeah, it is. He goes, thanks, I was praying for it. And he takes it and keeps walking. And I'm like, what the freaking heck? Yeah. So to me, it's been gradual.
Yeah.
And it's been like, let me just trust myself. And you have to just keep going. I remember one time I was just struggling. I was like, I'm just trying to do what's right. And it doesn't feel like anything is working out. Mm-hmm. Like I had lost my girlfriend of 3.5 years this one particular time. My friends were all like, what are you doing? Because I was on this journey. And my family, it was just such a weird time. And it was when I was trying to get my life together. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever tried to get your life together and you feel like, why does it feel like it's getting worse? Like I'm trying to do what's right,
Like I'm taking steps forward, but yet I'm going back.
Yeah, that's right? Like, I didn't know I'm doing the moonwalk, right? Like, thanks, And, but I remember sitting there and, for me, this is, you could take the principle if you don't believe in the Bible. It's totally fine. I was sitting there and I said this prayer and I was just pondering and I said, I'm willing to do whatever's right. Mm-hmm. It's just hard right now.
Yeah.
And there was and I opened up and I said, just give me something. Mm-hmm. Like, help me understand something. I'll stay on this path, but just help me understand. I literally opened up the scriptures that I had, and there was a verse that felt like it was highlighted with light, which is crazy.
Yeah,
and
I know what you mean.
And it said, all things work together for good. Right, to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And that was like, I felt like that was the message. Everything's going to work out for your good. And then I get on the train with nothing on me, right? I'm sitting in the front of the train and I hear this like sound, like getting closer, like, and then I look up and there's a guy on crutches walking right at me, like looking at me in the eyes. And I was like, this is going to be interesting. Like, I don't know what he wants. Maybe he has a question. Maybe he wants money. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Judgmental Henry, right? Like, and so he looks at me and he comes up and he's like, hey. And I'm like, hey. And he's like, when God says all things, he means all things. He didn't say some things. He didn't say almost everything. He didn't say a little bit of things. Everything's going to work together for your good. Just stay on the path. And I was
crazy.
Like, and at that point, I was
like, what?
Yeah, it was. I literally was like, what the freaking heck was that? Like,
I would feel like I was tripping. I'd be like,
I thought I was.
Yeah.
I was like, did someone put something in my breakfast? But I didn't know. I don't even know where he went because I went so in my head. And at that point, I realized, do I really trust? Because trust is what brings peace.
Yep. Yeah.
Do I really trust? And peace will keep my heart open enough to hear the intuition that I need. To receive, exactly. And at that point, I may believe certain things like the quote unquote Sunday school answer of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a different thing to believe in a message and it's a different thing to believe a message.
Absolutely.
We put up quote cards all the time on Instagram, but the question is, this is so cool, share.
Yeah.
But what do you truly subconsciously in your energy, in your soul, in your spirit, in your mind, in your body believe about that? Do you really believe it or do you want to believe it? And that's the thing is like when we can understand and trust that if right now your intention is, I want to get more aligned, I want to get more in tune, then do the work for it. Get into gratitude. Listen every single day. Take time for yourself. We live in a busy world.
Yep.
Right now, if you're listening to this, like, are you scrolling on social media at the same time? Are you thinking about something else? Mm-hmm. Or are you saying, let me open myself up to say, maybe don't listen to the words that we speak. Listen to the message in between the words that we speak.
Oh, yep. That's honestly where I feel like the most wisdom comes from. And that's where I feel like when you're present, like you've been saying, and self-awareness, which you're huge on, is loving self-awareness.
Yes. I love that you said that.
I know. I'm like, that's huge, because that's where you find your intuition. That's where you find
100%.
trust,
100%.
because you see in between the lines with yourself.
Yeah, 100,000,000%.
And
I
so-
love that so much. That's the thing, is like, what's crazy is like, if Britt and I, if like, say, whoever's listening, all three of us are walking down the street, and every time you discovered something about yourself, there was another person with us that was like, man, you should have thought something else. That was stupid. Man, blah, blah, blah. And after a while, you'll stop telling them the truth, because you never get rewarded for it. You get punished for it. And then you end up knowing enough truth to be uncomfortable, but not enough truth to become free. And that's what we do with ourselves. Is we learn something, we're like, I should be somewhere else. I should be somewhere else. And then we should all over ourselves, right? And then it's like, and then I should be doing this. Man, you should be there. You should be there, right? I love you. You're so awesome. And it's like we end up like putting a cage around ourselves, because we're not going to be honest with ourselves, because we're too afraid to be honest with ourselves, because we think it's our identity. We're like, I shouldn't be somewhere else. Like, why? You can't. What you resist will persist. And unless you lovingly can look at yourself and say that, there's a really important line. Dr. Stephen Porges says, there are no bad reactions, only adaptive ones. Everything you're doing is an adaptation to what your subconscious mind thinks that you need to feel safe and build connection with.
Yeah.
Even if it's self-sabotage. Like my sister, I used to have this limitation with money, right? I would keep hitting this wall. And then I did the work. I was like, okay, Henry, you know the tricks. What is your subconscious mind? Why do you sabotage when you get to a certain place? And I realized I value love over money. And I had a belief that if I make money, my relationship with my sister would take a hit. So my subconscious mind would be like, no, we're not going to do that. It's like the thermostat. If you set it at 70 and it goes to 75, it goes, cool down, buddy. And you go down there. And so every time I was about to do something awesome, I would feel like I hit a wall.
Wow.
The year that I resolved that with my sister was the first year I broke 6 figures. Literally.
Isn't that crazy though, that like the belief, like when you said that, in my mind, I'm like, how does that end up controlling us and where we're going?
100%.
Like, it's just so mind-boggling to me that like something that's so, and you know what, I posted on my story one day where I said, what was the question exactly? It was basically asking, hey, what's something that you believe that you would want to rewire one day, And you read some of these, and when you're in a place where that's not necessarily your negative core belief or something you might not 100% relate to in that moment, and you've got your own, right? You read it and you're like, how does this person believe this? It's
could
like,
be anything.
I mean, I heard like it was like my weight determines my value, and I'm like, what? But there is always something that ends up. But regardless, I'm just saying it's crazy that once you are able to identify it, you broke 6 figures. You were able to overcome something that was so limiting. And I think so many people can relate to that. And so that's amazing. Thank
you. And I love that you said loving self-awareness, because unless I accepted where I was at and said, you know what, this is where I'm at. Thank you, body, for having this belief to try to keep me safe. And let me understand what's really going on. And there's a bunch of frameworks we can do and a bunch of stuff we could probably dive into.
Yeah.
But that alone, that loving space, I created a safe enough place to tell myself the truth and then get to the root and then actually heal the root of it and understand what's really going on. This is crazy. So you just said something about weight. One of my mentors, I was working with a lady who could not lose weight. Like no matter what she did, she could not. Like invested in all the programs, everything. She went in and found out that when this woman was a little girl, she was on the pier with her mom and she was really thin as a little girl. And her aunt came up to her and goes, oh my gosh, you're so skinny, you're going to fly into the ocean. And so the girl's subconscious mind said, gain weight or you will die.
Wow.
So what is her subconscious mind saying? You better not lose weight because you will die if you lose weight.
Is that insane?
It's nuts. And so we beat ourselves up like, I can't believe it, I'm so bad. It's like, no, that was an adaptive behavior. Your subconscious mind thought it served a purpose at the time.
You're always going to try to take care of yourself, even if it might not necessarily be helping.
Right.
Your body's
100%.
going to be 100% responsive to, okay, what do I need to do to protect
100%.
myself? What do I need to do to be able to like, it's
Yes.
just, that's the nature of it.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. 100%. We can talk so much
For
more.
so
I'm
long,
like getting so
I know.
passionate. I'm like, you're talking a lot. Just let Britt talk more. I'm like,
Oh my gosh,
you
no.
know?
I'm sitting here and I'm just like, I literally don't want, like, I have all these thoughts and stuff going in my head, and you and I can like, but I'm just like, I have a limited amount of time with Henry for people listening and watching, and I want them to get everything they can from him, you know, because they get to hear me all the time, and like, but it's not about me.
And that's a blessing for sure.
What?
You're so awesome.
Thank you.
I love your desires.
Well, but
and
you
heart.
just have so much, and that's where I'm like, I just want to pack this episode. And so it already has been. And I'm excited because this next part is my favorite part of every episode. And it's the uncensored Q&A. And that's where, and I love when you always love to dive deep. And so I wanted to ask you, what is something that you've been through personally in your life that's been difficult, hard, painful? And what did you learn from it?
My mother's cancer battle. You know, my father died 3 years before my mom. And that was hard, you know. It was a struggle for him. There was a lot of moving parts with my dad and family dynamics growing up. You know, they did the best they could, but there was a lot of unhealed trauma generationally. And so the last periods of my dad's life were very sacred and very difficult and healing at the same time. And but going to my mom's, like when my father passed away, at the time, my sister spiraled down. It was really hard for her. I didn't know what to do. I was going through a lot in my life at the time. I was in a really unhealthy relationship. It was just a lot of things were going on at the time. And then when my mother, there was a day, I remember it was March 15th. I believe it was March 15th. That year, and my mom was coughing, and I had this really strong, talk about intuition. Yeah. I had spent years listening to the voice inside of me and understanding it and learning the difference between what it feels like and something said, take your mom to the hospital. And so my mom was like, Mom, you're
out of the hospital?
No, to the hospital.
To the hospital, okay.
And my mom was like, no, I'm just coughing. Let's just go get cough medicine. And the thing said, take her to the hospital now. I said, Mom, I called them. There's no wait. We went to one that's nearby. I was like, wasn't a wait, which is crazy in LA, emergency room, right? Yeah. I was like, let's just go. We went in. And then as soon as we got there, they did a test. Like, she has a ton of fluid in her organs. And then the doctor, eventually calls you into the office and says, can you come into my office? I'm like, this feels like a movie. He goes, your mom has cancer. It spread to her organs. If you didn't bring her in today, she probably would have passed away tomorrow. I was like, oh my gosh. So then I called my sister. I'm like, you need to get here. And at that moment, this was, and of course, this is my hero. This is my best friend. This is, my mom, everything to me. And I just love her beyond words. And I'm even getting emotional thinking about it. And like, I remember I called my sister and I pulled her into the office where the doctor was. And I said, can I talk to my sister for a second? I said, hey, listen, we can't control what we can't control. Yeah. But we must control what we can. Wow, yep, and I said, I know it's going to be hard. I said, but we have to show up for Mom. So we need to decide in advance how we're going to show up. I said, I'm not saying ignore our feelings. I'm not saying have emotional override. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying let us feel what we need to feel, but we need to decide in advance to do this healthy and to do this in the best way, and just know there's a difference. God grant me the peace to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so it was a really hard run for that year with my mom. And there were moments where I would need to go in and go in my car and I'd listen to James Bay crying. I don't know why James Bay, right? But I listened to James Bay and I'd drive around for like an hour and I'd come back and I said, I'm going to just show up. Even though it's hard, I'm going to show up and I'm going to do this work and I can't control this. And it's hard seeing someone you love go to 70 pounds and changing my mother's diapers, like things like that, like you don't normally ever expect to do. Yeah. And I remember the hardest part was when it got toward the end of her life and it was rough. And I remember the day she had passed away, it was in the middle of the night and I was holding her hand and at that moment it was really fascinating. I had like a spiritual experience, but I also was like really, really sad and without getting descriptive because it's not the most pleasant thing to talk about. But as soon as I knew she passed away, at that moment in my head, I said, Henry, you have a decision to make. And I said, you can either be bitter for the rest of your life or you can honor this woman with how you live your life. Wow. And I remember I said this out loud, and I said, Mom, I will honor your sacrifices with how I live my life. And a decision in advance that I made has pivoted the direction of my life. And I think there's power in decision making. There's power in framing things. There's power in knowing what I can control and what I can't control. And it was one of the most difficult things I'd ever gone through. But the lessons that I learned and who I became from it, things pass, things come and go, but who I become from it will stick with me for the rest of my life. And I realized I could either be pissed off for the rest of my life. I'm not saying I'm not hurt, not saying I don't miss her. Like when I got my TED Talk, the first person I wanted to call was her, but she wasn't there. When I got off the stage, in front of 35,000 people, right? Like when I did that the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, who do I want to share this with? And I was single at the time. And so I'm not saying I don't feel emotion behind it. I'm saying the man that I became from the struggle and the decisions I made because of the struggle and in the struggle have formulated the person that's sitting across from you. And so that's probably the sum of that, one of the hardest things I've been through.
Wow. I'm so grateful that you shared like your insight and what you did to get through what you went through was so powerful, and it's freeing, because I know a lot of people who go through any type of hardship, but in fact, I've got so many friends who've experienced loss specifically, but any type of hardship, when you give it so much energy trying to change it or control the situation, right? It becomes so much harder. You take on a weight that you don't need, and that's something that I think is so remarkable, that in the moment, it wasn't even after the fact necessarily. Like, I mean, you learned so much through it and after, but like what I think is so remarkable and I admire you so much for is that in that moment, you made that decision. And, it could have been also because you've been practicing being aligned with yourself, being grounded, all these things, which is another reason why it's so important to hop on that. Even if you're like, oh, I didn't go through trauma growing up and my life is great right now. You never know what's going to hit. And in those moments, when you have the tools, when you have the 100%. Knowledge, you're able to handle it completely different. Yep. And that impacts you, your family, your children, your wives, your husbands, your friends, your family, and the rest of your life.
Yes.
And so the fact that you, in that moment, you made that intentional decision, I'm going to be intentional right now. I'm going to be mindful right now. And I'm going to allow myself to feel everything, but I'm also going to remind myself that I have so much power in what I can control. Right. And I choose to release what I can't. And moving forward, that wasn't just, you've got the loss happening all in one, you had a journey to go on. And you were like, hey, buckle up. Like, I'm going to get myself into the mindset to not only get through this for myself, but also to go through this and be there for my mom, for my sister. And it was hard regardless.
100%.
It doesn't make everything go away. It doesn't make everything easy peasy. Like it's still so hard and dark. And there's those moments where you're just like, I just want to give up. Like I like, I'm trying and it's still hard and it's still hurting. And, right. But like in those moments where you're able to hunker down into your foundation and make those intentional decisions, realign, readjust, ground yourself, you develop not even like you pull that strength, the divine strength that we're literally designed with, and you pull it to the surface and you're like, okay, and you can have those moments where you're like, it's okay to not be okay.
Right. 100%.
But you take that and you're like, all right, this is now I'm moving forward, and you learn something each time. And something we were talking about earlier that I wanted to touch on was, you're listening, and this is part of how you gain intuition, and you build in your intuition, you trust it, you're able to hear it, distinguish the difference between all the outside voices and even like, what you're feeling like you're getting from God or the higher power that you believe in. It's building brick by brick. Every time you listen to yourself, even if you're like, I don't know why I'm having this thought, I don't know why I'm, every time you put that brick there and you're building something so powerful. And that's when you're building the trust that you have for yourself.
100%.
And that comes into, there's self-betrayal, which is a whole nother thing. But when you're able to do that, you're establishing an opening for your intuition to come in. And when you're going through things like this, you're able to then hone into that, use it, and it helps you go through something that you couldn't have ever imagined before. And so it's such an example to hear how you navigated that situation, because I know so many people listening who can relate to loss. And what's cool too is that so many people can relate in general to tragedy or to trauma or whatever it might be. And so many people can relate to moments where you want to try to control a situation or you wish you could change something and you can't.
Right. 100%. Two things come to mind. Thank you for sharing that. It's spot on. Is let people help you. If you can't be emotionally regulated, let people be in emotional regulation with you. Like even in the next level of success or in anything that you do in trial and tragedy, a lot of us try to do it on our own. We're the Lone Rangers. Like, I don't want to burden anybody. I don't want to do this. Let people help you and tell them how they can best help you.
Yeah. Give them the tools or the understanding.
People don't read minds, and it's like, and nobody's you, right? And so they're going to do it differently. And there's going to be moments you're going to feel. Second thing that's really important is there's a story of this guy, and it's like the final touchdown, and the few seconds left in the game, and they had to score this touchdown to win. And the guy's running, and this crowd is going crazy, and they're screaming and they're yelling, and the coach goes, "Cut left!" And the guy cuts left, and then he ends up like dodging, and ends up scoring a touchdown. And everyone's like, "How did you recognize the coach's voice?" He said, "I've heard it enough times when it wasn't as loud to where when it was loud, it cut through the loudness." And this is what's crazy is like right now in the little things, learn to listen to yourself. Right now, be still in the little and big things. So no matter what, you learn what's really going on. You learn how the true inner voice sounds like versus the noise in the world. You learn the trauma, the safety brain versus, what that is. And even if you don't know, at least you're like giving yourself that self-care of like, you know what, you're telling your body, your mind, your spirit that I am enough to pause and to listen to myself. Because if you really want to develop self-love, you develop it in a way that you would with somebody else. You can have a conversation with them and listen to them. Right? If you're not speaking life into yourself and listening to yourself, you're not developing self-love. Period. If you have not taken the time to really listen to what you truly need in the last week, you've not shown yourself. You've not developed a friendship with yourself. A good relationship, and so those two thoughts came to mind with what you said. But thanks for sharing your thoughts. It was awesome.
No, I love that.
And to anybody going through grief, like, my heart's with you. It's tough. I'm sending you so much love, and it's the journey,
Yeah, it's the journey. And that's what, I really, this podcast, the entire purpose of it and where it started is that, we're all on our own journeys. And I just hope that people can take from this and know that we can turn anything into an opportunity for growth. And it doesn't always have to be like these monumental moments. And we might not have, the clarity in the moment like you did, because maybe we're not, as prepared. Maybe it's just, we just don't in that moment, and that's okay.
That's okay.
But it's there. It's possible. We can do it. And like everyone is capable, because, I bring on all different walks of life, and we all go through our different things. We all are able to learn from it. We're learning, from it. And so it's really remarkable. And it's a huge thing that I don't want to say like I have a testimony for necessarily, but I stand by, and I'm so passionate because I can't deny the power of it.
100%.
So I'm really grateful that I could have someone like you on who has practiced this for years and years and years, has educated yourself on it, has gone through your own personal experiences. So you have so much value you're able to provide. Thanks so much for watching or listening. If you liked this episode, subscribe and follow along. If there's someone you feel like would be a good fit for the show, feel free to send me recommendations on Instagram at alifeworthliving.show. I appreciate you guys so much, and I'm grateful to have you here. And until next time, have a great week.